Okay, let's go.
I'm Nicole Lee, and welcome back to You Never Know, where we talk about life, career, change, and the stories of people who have taken the unconventional road and embraced the unknowns. If you like my podcast and content so far, remember to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you are watching or listening to this to help me make more relevant content for you in the future. It means so much to me. Sometimes some of the most interesting and illustrious careers aren't planned. They unfold. And today's guest knows exactly what this means with a career spanning 3 decades that unfolded across roles, industries, and continents. His journey began in finance at Deloitte in London before transitioning into marketing at global giants like Shell, Henkel, and Unilever, where his innovative work earned him 3 prestigious Cannes Lions Awards, often known as the Oscars of advertising, for his groundbreaking digital marketing campaigns in Southeast Asia. But here's the twist. After decades of success in marketing, he walked away from all of it into something new, learning and leadership development, where he helped global leaders at Unilever transform and unlock their full potential. I'm super excited to have the conversation today. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Anser Aly to You Never Know. Anser, thank you so much for being here today. We have so much to talk about.
Thanks, Nicole, for having me, and I'm excited to be here.
You know, Anser, we've only known each other for a couple of months, but it seems much longer than that. And whenever I meet with you, it's always been so inspiring. You have been so supportive of my journey, honestly, always asking me to believe in myself and in my potential. So thank you so much, Anser. I'm really, really grateful to have met you. Can you remember how we met?
I do. I think it was the gift of modern day LinkedIn, where I think the beauty is that you somehow attract on your feed topics and people that you're drawn to. And I guess what attracted me about your story was that it's unfinished, it's raw, and that's why it's more beautiful. And that's how we connected, and I believe that's when we first met. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have any memories of the first meeting, but...
Yeah, I think we had coffee in the East Coast.
That's right, my favorite spot.
Yeah, because that's where we both live, and East Coast of Singapore, of course, not of the US. And I remember that I had met you for coffee, and the first thing that struck me was you had such an interesting and actually very beautiful name, Anser, and it's not very common for someone to be called Anser. And so I asked you where you were from, because I couldn't really guess, and you said, please guess. So I think I guessed India, and I think Morocco. I'm not sure why, even though it was, it was just a wild guess. And so tell us, Anser, where are you from?
So I'm from Pakistan, but what's unique perhaps about my story is that I'm a first-generation Pakistani, whereas my parents both hail from India. So they were immigrants from India who really believed in the dream of a new country. And they migrated. My dad was 14, my mom was 11. They hail from North India, from Agra, the city of the Taj Mahal. But they came in pursuit of a dream. And I guess what was really unique about my childhood growing up in Karachi was that Karachi was almost like the New York of the Indian subcontinent, because from a sleepy fisherman's town, overnight in 1947, when partition happened, it became home to more than 1 million refugees from different parts of India. So it was a potpourri of languages, culture. And I guess today, with my marketing lens, I can say it perhaps attracted a very unique persona, the get-goers, the people who in those days, imagine 1947, there was certainly no LinkedIn, no TripAdvisor. They had no idea what to expect on the other side, but they took a gamble. And these were people who were very enterprising, and they left their very comfortable homes where they were living for centuries in different parts of India, and they decided to migrate to a new country. And therefore, Karachi attracted a lot of new people from all over India. So as I grew up, it was a potpourri of different subcultures, languages, but very enterprising. And that's what was a fascinating world to grow up in.
I really love that. The other thing that I wanted to ask was, And we both talked about it before in my journey, especially my spiritual journey. The name of a person is extremely important, and it actually tells you who you are, and actually your name found you. Anser, do you know what your name means? And I know you have a little story to tell as well.
Indeed. So in fact, it was my mother who named me, and she always wanted to have a name that's not so common, but more importantly, to have a name that had a profound meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And incidentally, when I was born, close to my birth, she had a dream. And she had a dream that a very noble gentleman on the dining table, it's a positive signal,
yes.
He informed her that you're going to have a boy, and it'll be Anser's birthday soon. So she distinctly remembered the name Anser, even though it wasn't a common one. When she woke up, she tried to find out what does it mean, and nobody had heard it. So for the first 3 months of my life, I was without a name.
Yeah.
Because my mother just wanted to make sure that before she names me, she wanted to find out what the meaning was. So she went everywhere, and at that age and time, obviously, there was no Google, there was no internet.
Mm-hmm.
And during the period of 3 months that it took her to eventually find out where Anser comes from, she named me a nickname which was Fussy. Now, not the English fussy, which perhaps my wife will tell you still fits me well, but I think it's a Persian origin name, which means eloquent. But that was something that I was called for the first 3 months of my life. When finally, and my mother was an educationist, she was a professor, she was in that circle, but no one could help her. Finally, it was a professor at Al-Azhar University, which is a very historical university all the way in Egypt, where a professor told her that actually Anser hails from a Quranic verse in Arabic, which is Nasru min Allahi Fathan Kareeb, which roughly translated means God helps those who help themselves. And the word Anser is derived from Nasr in that Quranic verse, which basically means someone who helps the most, but also someone whose help in which divine help is a part of. So that really made a lot of sense to my mom. And she said, okay, it's got a profound meaning. It comes from a specific verse. And finally, she then named me Anser.
I love that story, and I remember when you told me the first time, I was really emotional about it because it spoke so much to how sometimes actually many times we are so much more than who we think we are, and that the universe is actually so much bigger than we think as well. And a lot of times it is, divine intervention that actually brings us to where we are today. So thank you for sharing that story. Anser, you won 3 Cannes Lions Awards. That's like 3 Oscars for advertising and marketing. And that's a great achievement. Before we get there, did you always wanted to be a marketer?
Very interesting. No, I actually call myself an accidental marketer.
Okay.
Which is a story we can come back to. But all my life, soon after I realized that being an astronaut, most kids would dream of being a pilot. I used to dream of being an astronaut. But growing up in Pakistan, I very soon realized no chance because my country did not have the funds to support a space program. Very soon after that, right from the age of 12, I had the absolute clarity that I wanted to be an accountant. I wanted to go in finance and I wanted to be an accountant. And from the age of 12 till 22, that's the only thing I ever wanted to be. So I did everything working backwards from there, choosing my GCSE O-level subjects, my A-level subjects, my first degree, knowing that that's the end goal. And finally, my first job was also at Deloitte. And I was fortunate enough to get 2 offers, one from KPMG, one from Deloitte, which are both 2 of the big 4. And I made, again, in retrospect, the wrong choice between the 2. I chose Deloitte. I shouldn't have chosen Deloitte. See, and in that day and age, there's only so much you can read on a brochure. Again, there wasn't a fully functional internet. And I saw that Deloitte had a higher pass rate because, in chartered accountancy, it's a very competitive profession. And I saw that KPMG's pass rate was low. So I assumed, and that's the biggest first lesson in life, never assume, that Deloitte must be doing something better to support people who are doing the articleships with them.
Right.
That's what. But actually, in truth, Nicole, they just had a very low, no nonsense rate. That the moment if you didn't get through your exams the first time, they got rid of you, and that's how they maintained a very high percentage.
Right.
So in retrospect, I made the wrong conclusion. It ended up being that KPMG, between these two, offers more tolerance and more support to nurture you to get through those hoops and all the exams. So that was another lesson learned.
And that was in London, right?
That was in London, yes.
So you moved from Pakistan to London.
That's right. I studied in Pakistan. I was very privileged to go to a fantastic school in Karachi Grammar School. So from day one, from kindergarten all the way through till my A-levels, till I was 18, I was in the same school. So I had a very grounded and anchored childhood.
Okay.
And then I moved for my degree. I went to Manchester. I went to the UK.
Okay.
And I did my first degree in finance, only because I saw that as a stepping stone to becoming an accountant. And that's when I had the two offers and I ended up choosing Deloitte.
How did the idea get into your head in the first place that you always wanted to be an accountant?
For all the wrong reasons. And that's why I tell students today, whenever I'm mentoring students, that your single criteria for choosing a profession has to be your interest, your passion, what gets you going. And in my days, we used to use the word scope. Which profession offers you a scope for jobs, for money? And anyone could have looked at me when I was young and told me, hey, you're not the accountant type. I was very much into the creative arts, and I won some awards for art, which took a back seat very soon. So the only reason I was enamored by accounting and finance is because my uncle, who was very successful, one of my older cousins, they were all in either cost and management accountant or a chartered accountant. They were driving flashy cars. They were working in great offices. So I got attracted to the perception and the idea of what being an accountant gets you. And in those days, most CEOs, by the way, which my uncle was as well, were from a finance background. And now we know, looking back, these things happen in waves. So I chose accountancy for the wrong reasons. And which is why a year at Deloitte, even the first month in Deloitte was enough to tell me, this is not for me, because auditing is boring. It's respectfully, I say that respectfully, because I love the freedom to do things my way, whereas there it was all about compliance. Nicole has to do things exactly the same way as Anser does.
It's a checklist.
Exactly. And if you deviate 1 degree right or left, you get slapped on the wrist.
So that's where you know that I did accountancy too.
Indeed.
But decided not to pursue that. But sometimes things happen that way so that we know that it's something that is not what we prefer and that we can make a different choice. So you went to Deloitte and you stayed for 1 year.
I stayed for a year. It was initially really exciting because every 6 weeks I would move to a new client. So you get to see different industries. Ford Motor Company in week 1, then week 5 it's some football club or it's a different client. And you also get to see different parts of the UK or London, which is a big place to discover initially. But over a period of time, that excitement waned because the actual nature of work was just not one that I could relate to. And after a point, Nicole, I started missing something that I could own end to end. So because you typically go to a client, you spend 5 or 6 weeks doing what you're doing or consulting or auditing, you move on. You never get to see what happened before or after. So I was craving by that time for a desk job, some place and some project that I could own and I could see from start to finish or strategy to shelf, as we call it now. And that's when I then happened to apply to Unilever and I got into Unilever.
And you applied to Unilever in a marketing...
In finance. I applied in finance as well because for me at that time, the clarity was still not there about finance is not for me. The clarity was that maybe auditing is not for me, but I could go to a company that I could then really have a sense of belonging and an end-to-end project ownership. But the funny thing is, and this is why I call myself the accidental marketeer, I applied for finance. It was a very long drawn process. It took 12 weeks, starting for an application form that took ages to complete. Then stage 1, stage 2, and finally it culminated in what used to be then called an assessment center. We are now more diplomatic. We call it a discovery center. But it's a day-long exercise where they have psychometrists, psychologists sitting in the room observing you. The different exercises, you come in as a group. And finally it ends with the panel interview. So I did that whole exercise at the end of month 3. So it was a long process. But by 5 p.m., craziest things happened, which is some of the biggest things in my life have been these fleeting moments, which had they not happened, my life trajectory would have been very different. So here I am at the end of a very long process. It's been a long day. It's end of month 3. And I'm just waiting to be called in at 5:25 p.m. for my final panel interview. And I'm just sitting there and suddenly I look up, which, by the way, is something very rarely. It's my wife who's taught me to look at the stars. I'm someone, for some reason, just looks down perpetually, even when I walk. So I just looked up and I suddenly saw something. It was an image on the wall, which today I know we call it a KV or a key visual, but it was really a poster, a wall painting.
In the office of Unilever.
In the office of Unilever and the headquarters in London, just across the River Thames in St. Paul's Cathedral. And this was a beautiful shot of a Calvin Klein CK perfume bottle. And in those days, CK was a Unilever brand. But just that imagery, just that one shot of a bottle, it just looked so magical that suddenly I looked up and I said, hey, if somebody can make a static bottle look so attractive and want me to want it, marketing must be really fun. And these are just thoughts I'm having deep in my head. I have this lady, Sue, I think she was called, bless her, from HR, comes in and she makes a very, typical British comment. She said, "You look in deep thoughts." And I said, "Yeah, Sue, I'm just looking up and I'm wondering how much fun must it be in marketing? Because Unilever truly is a marketing company, isn't it?" And she says, "Yeah, we've got hundreds of brands." And I said, "What a pity, Sue. I've applied for finance." She looks at me and she said, "Well, what will it take for you to change? Just go in there and tell them, live your dream." And I'm just staring at her because that's a very gutsy thing to do. And we're talking about late 90s here. So
pretty cool of her to say that.
It is. And I'm so indebted to her.
Just one statement.
One statement. And she infused me with some very uncharacteristic sort of energy. So I went in and I gave my panel interview. I had 4 poker-faced people. It's the 90s. They don't show you warmth. They try and look scary. And right at the end of a half an hour long interview, and this is 6 p.m. on a Friday, and in London, that's when you hit the pub. You're not sitting there. They asked me, okay, any questions? And again, in those days, that is not an invitation for questions. That just, thank you very much. I said, well, I don't have any questions, but I have one request. And they all look at me, and I see 8 eyeballs staring at me. And I said, would you mind considering me for marketing? And we have the most deadliest 30-second pause of my life.
Wow.
Where I'm thinking, Sue, no thank you. Anser, what have you done? This was the only chance, and now you've wrecked it. They all look at me, they don't flinch, they don't show any emotion, and they just say, thank you, and they show me the door. And I feel gutted, and I'm thinking, why did I need to do that? So the weekend, I don't remember it, it was horrible. Tuesday, and those were the days where there were no emails, so still you got things in the post. Monday, they must have typed the letter, and Tuesday, I got an offer letter. And I was really over the moon. And the offer letter read that we are hiring you as a management trainee. We offer you, and we offer you a place as in trade marketing. Now, I really didn't understand, or I didn't know what that meant. So I said, oh, wonderful, that worked. Trade marketing is a fancy word effectively for sales. It's a bridge between sales and marketing. So they didn't trust me enough to put me in marketing, but they felt, okay, maybe we can try this guy out in this interface. So that's how I got my entry close to marketing. And then I sort of maneuvered my way in the next year and a half into proper marketing. So that's how I became an accidental marketer. But that I remained for 18 long years after that. And I had a wonderful time working on some beautiful billion-dollar brands. No 2 days looked alike. And that's what really I loved about my job. Until I then changed tracks again.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And it's also an example of how sometimes you never know what someone said to you, what, changing your mind in the last minute because of an inspiration you had actually led you to. So that's truly amazing, and I love that. So you spent 18 years in marketing. You won 3 awards. Tell us, give me an example of one of the campaigns that sort of really stood out for you. And before I ask you actually the next question, which is how you felt after receiving them.
So, to every parent, each child is precious. Each award is very special and unique. But the one I'll call out was a particular one which was special not because we won an award. It was special because it came at a time when our chips were down, and as a company, as a brand, we were really brought down to our knees by competition.
Okay.
And this campaign actually genuinely moved the needle in changing the trajectory and changing the fortunes of the brand, and helped us bottom out and turn the story. So that's why it was very pivotal. Not just as the award was just a cherry on the cake, but this was a genuine campaign that actually turned our fortunes.
Okay.
And the brand was Comfort.
Okay.
But Comfort was the one feeling I didn't have when working on it. It was highly uncomfortable because we had eyeball competition with Procter & Gamble's Downy, and we were market leaders.
Softener
yes,
brand, right?
fabric softener or fabric conditioner, and we were the market leader. But then one Christmas, Downy was launched by P&G, and we were literally humbled. But what this campaign was something that went viral even in those early days, where we took a very innovative approach, where we did not just come up with a regular advertising, but we really made it experiential, and we said, okay, let's put it to the test. And this is the time when YouTube was just picking up, and social media was a lot of investment still went on your traditional TV spend, but social media was becoming big, and we were one of the first few brands who actually put our money behind it. And we came up with a campaign where we said, what would be the litmus test to show parents that this particular fabric conditioner is really soft on skin? And we said, okay, babies is what we need to use. But what if we use real babies? And we did a live experiment where we put a toddler, literally someone who still crawls, and we allowed them to make a choice. We put a very soft fabric washed by Comfort, and on the other hand, we kept something that the parents are craving for. Could be a guitar, could be a scooter, could be a money bag or jewelry, and let them cheer the child and see what the child gets drawn to. So we did this, and we recruited local parents all across Southeast Asia, and we interviewed them, and we made sure that we had an object that they really wanted. And we put it to the test, and 9 out of 10 kids somehow naturally gravitated to the soft thing, and they loved rubbing it on the face. And we captured this footage, and then we turned it into a minute or 2 minute long video. And it was our first experiment in long form content. And this just took off because it was real, it was raw, and it was rough on the edges. And it was something that ended up winning the Cannes Lions. And of course, that was a great cherry on the cake, but it truly got us eyeballs. It got people to sample Comfort. It got us to turn that corner where we found ourselves in, no thanks to Downy.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, sometimes you need competition to actually sort of inspire you to take the next step forward, or to, push the boundaries as well, right? So how do you feel after winning the first one, the second one, and then the third one? And I ask you this because, it is known as the Oscars of advertising and marketing, and many Hollywood actors, for example, do see winning the Oscars as being the pinnacle of their career. And for some of them, after winning it, they do feel kind of, empty and lost. So I want to find out from you, how do you feel after winning it?
It was greatly rewarding and fulfilling, but I must add that it wasn't an empty or hollow feeling, because it literally takes a village to win an award, because it wasn't me alone. There's a whole team along with agency partners that you work together on something, you believe in it, you have your conviction, and if it leads to an award, is brilliant. But equally, you don't do it for the award, you do it because you feel the brand needs it, you feel that it's the right thing to do, and it'll grow the business. And if it gets a tick on all those things and eventually gets you also recognition, that's a perfect combination. But I think the best feeling was how it brings everyone together. And the fact that we believed in us when nobody else was, and we stayed the path, and we did what was right for the brand. That is what brings you together and makes you look back and say, hey, these are some nice things to put on the wall. But it was truly the people and the camaraderie and the time that it brought us together, which was actually a very difficult time because we were not getting results. Results, always, there's a lag. So it's a beautiful feeling. And then to be able to do it once could be a fluke. The second time and the third time happened because we were then more deliberate about it. But we did it truly with the point of view of let's do what's the right thing is, and then the awards can follow if they do.
Do you think that marketing has changed today from where you were before? I'm just curious because with the advent of social media and new technologies, has that changed the scene?
Yes, but both for the good and the worse.
Okay.
The good, because I believe marketing is the new finance, which is quite ironic, knowing my path and my journey, because finance was always very precise. But when I started in marketing 25 years ago, it was not truly a science. Now there's actually a function in Meta and other big tech called marketing science, because you can be very precise. You can now really know who to target, how to reach them. Whereas in my days, it was just you got to guess your way through it. So in a way, marketing has really evolved, and it's become a science. And marketing is the new finance, because you can measure what you do and you can track. But for the worse, because I feel the quality of marketing has really gone down, because a lot of people who are now coming into marketing, I sadly observe that a lot of the discussions around the table are very tactical in nature. The discussions should not begin with, hey, let's do a Facebook campaign or let's get on TikTok. That's very tactical. That depends on what your objective is. So classical marketing or traditional marketing, the principles are, what's the brand? What are you hoping to achieve? What are you trying to solve? Who are you serving? Go where the fish are. Fish where the fish are, meaning it could be that TikTok's the best solution, but if your consumers are not there, if your customers are not there, why are you on TikTok? So I think that whole strategic element of marketing is getting a bit lost. And I think the real successful marketers are those who can strategize first, then get into the tactical side.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that applies to many different crafts and areas as well, because the meaning behind why you do something and how you want to position it is extremely, extremely important. And I totally agree with you based on my experience as well with people in the marketing space. Sometimes it's a lot about numbers, but sometimes it is the creativity and the subjectivity behind it that actually is what makes it beautiful. So yeah, that's interesting to know. So Anser, then why did you leave marketing after being so successful in it? Why do you leave marketing for learning and development?
So actually, Nicole, being an accidental marketer for close to 2 decades, I made a very deliberate choice to then go into L&D and become a learning and leadership development professional full-time. But it was a long process. It didn't happen over time. And the reason it took so long was because I thought I was having the time of my life in marketing. Even today, marketing remains my first love. And there are some brands that I still look up and I feel very aspirational about them, and I wish I could have worked on them. But I sort of, the one word answer is purpose, because somewhere along that way in that journey, I discovered my purpose and my true north. And that happened maybe somewhere halfway through my journey. So what actually ended up happening, the day I found my clarity on my why, I sort of double-tracked. And how I did that was I held my day job as a marketeer, but by evening, I was everything but a marketeer. I tried my hands on being a mentor, a coach, a trainer, an instructor, a guest lecturer, a guest speaker. And I tried all those things for a long period of 7 to 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And I also found a role of that back and in my day job, where I became, while I'm a marketer and I'm leading a $1 billion brand along with the team, I became a brand coach within the company, and I started finding in different capacities, working with different teams. So I found that very rewarding. But that parallel journey actually showed me the way that my true path is in L&D. And it happened in a very gradual process, 7 or 8 years of really hustling and having a side hustle that I knew I drew a lot of oxygen from. So being a marketer by day, but trying my hand at so many other things by the evening, in the shape of a trainer, and designing my own courses and delivering them across different platforms to different audiences, really showed me that, hey, there is a bigger canvas out there. And I also realized, Nicole, by default, that while I was doing a lot of marketing related training. And by the way, one of my marketing roles was in what we used to call the Marketing Academy in London with Unilever. So it's almost like a very rare internal McKinsey kind of consulting role within Unilever. And that was fascinating because rather than working in one region on one brand, here I was consulting the ice creams category in Unilever in Russia in the morning, or the deodorants category in Spain in the afternoon. So that was fascinating exposure. And I loved the chance to ideate and work with other teams. So it slowly led me from a starting point of clarity to conviction and then courage to finally throw my hat in as a marketeer and go full time in learning and leadership development, because I drew a lot of energy from being a trainer and seeing how I could have a bigger impact on the canvas. Because functional skills are great, but a lot of people eventually, when they transition from being an individual contributor to being a leader, where you have to get work done from other people, that's where the leadership bit misses. And that's where I could play a role.
Was there anything outside of work that sort of triggered this sense of purpose within you?
Two things. One was a precise moment when I discovered my purpose. And for that, I owe it to my employers. I owe it to Unilever, who at the time, we have this wonderful program called Discover Your Purpose. It's a workshop. It's a one-day workshop. It does exactly what it says on the cover, where you enter the room at 9 and you leave with absolute clarity by 6. So I attended that workshop in Singapore, and that awakened the why in me and gave me clarity to the point where you can articulate your purpose in a single sentence. And from there, to answer your question, it was really this long journey of putting myself out there, purpose into action. How can I live my purpose? So I was trying my hand out at different experiences. And that experience of being in front of a crowd, being in a room with people, experimenting, trying different roles, and giving yourself the opportunity to fumble, but also to really do really well, that taught me the value of where I could truly make an impact. And that gave me the courage and the conviction eventually to pivot my career very late.
No, and I think a learning that I have as well is that it's never too late. It's never too late. Even though we think that, we're at this age and it's not possible, or, I already have a family and it's not possible, that sometimes things happen in divine timing, in the right timing for you to actually make that leap. And I think that's one learning. The other learning that I have after hearing from you is that sometimes you need to actually take action. Once we get a little bit of clarity about who we are and what our purpose is, it's about experimenting as well. And I think the fact that you, despite having a full-time job, sort of took the time after work to actually do all these things to find out whether it's really for you, I think that's a big learning for so many people who are hesitant about why, whether or not my passion is worth, monetizing, whether it can bring me to somewhere. I think action is super important.
Absolutely, because you need to actively seek those opportunities. They won't come to you. And I know at the start, it can trip you off, and one is very conscious of how will they come across and what will people think. But it truly doesn't matter, because what I tell myself, even in the early days when I started public speaking, and that's really putting yourself out there in front of 100, 200, 400 people, I used to always tell myself that it really doesn't matter even if I make a fool of myself, because my true audience is not the people in the room. It's everyone outside. And then it's up to me whether I share this with the people outside or not. So just finding ways to ground yourself and not feel unnerved. And you'll be surprised that once you take the first step, so many doors will open.
I like what you said about making a fool of yourself, which is not easy for many people to do, including myself. But you said that earlier, before we started filming as well, that, it's okay, I'm okay to make a fool of myself. Where did that come from? Like, did you always feel like you were okay to make a fool of yourself, even from young, or not?
No, on the contrary, I was always overconscious about myself and how I came across. I was never comfortable under my skin. It took me decades to finally find peace with who I was, how I looked, how I spoke. And I guess the needle moved when I said, hey, I'm thinking that everyone's watching me.
Yeah.
But that's so presumptuous, right? That's very cocky because it almost suggests that I'm thinking I'm the most important person in this room. The truth is, people don't care. People are just getting on with their lives.
100%.
And it truly doesn't matter what they thought of me, as long as I hustle and I really just allow myself the space to discover who I am and which are the situations that I work well in. And therefore, it's best to find opportunities where you are comfortable, where even if you end up making a fool of yourself, it's okay. Those are not the people you'll meet every day. So at the beginning, try and find safe spaces where nobody knows you or whatever puts you at ease. And then slowly you get the confidence to come in front of people who do matter to you.
That's such a big progress and growth for you, because so many of us care so much about what other people think of us, when actually other people are worried about what we think of them.
Exactly.
You know, so that's such a big learning for you, and actually for me as well. And it's something that I'm coming to accept who I am, and that it's okay to be myself, and that it's okay to not let other people sort of control what you're doing in your life. So after you moved into L&D, learning and development, what have you learned and observed about leaders, about the challenges they're facing, and what makes a great leader?
What makes a great leader is perhaps two things. Firstly, someone who listens. And I really think listening is a superpower. Listening is the best form of speaking, actually, because it allows you to really soak in what the other person is feeling and what they're conveying and what are they not actually articulating, but you can read from their body language. So a good leader is someone who's the last one to speak in a room and really gives the space to others and the psychological safety to others to actually express themselves. That's number one. And number two is really a good leader is one who brings or allows others to be the best form of themselves and to really show them what they can't see and tell them and that you believe in them and you can do so much better. So I think those two facets put together would make a great leader. And to your first question, which is when I observe leaders of all walks of life around me, and I'm very fortunate in my current role, I get to see a lot of them up close and personal. I feel that I put them in two categories. So young leaders, future leaders, if there was one thing I could give them, it would be self-belief. The fact that, don't worry, you will get there. Just keep on going. And if it's senior leaders, those who have already been out there, I think they could do with a little bit of self-awareness, because somehow on that journey, something happens, they forget that you do have a lot of power. Forever, leaders keep looking upwards, right? They're always looking to their leaders. And even if you're a CEO, you're thinking of shareholders and analysts. There's a whole world that is taking signals from you. And just to be conscious that every action, every word out of you has a huge impact on how people feel. That little bit of self-awareness could do them a lot of good. So self-belief for the young leaders and self-awareness for the more experienced ones.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. And it's very easy for me to remember as well. Self-belief, self-awareness. And so, we know sometimes we put a lot of pressure on leaders in organizations because we want the workplace as well to be everything to us. Have you seen or have you observed expectations that are unrealistic in terms of what we expect leaders to be?
True. To be honest, we are forever looking for a messiah who can, just come and charm us off our feet, to pull their charm offensive, to be charismatic. Sometimes we're expecting a lot from a single leader, and we expect them to have a magic wand. I guess it works both ways. So to be honest, a leader is also often reflecting off our behavior. So collectively, we can also influence how a leader behaves or show them the mirror. So there's a lot that can happen. So rather than forever feeling the victim, even if you genuinely are, we must think, okay, what is truly in our hands? What can we do? Or what's a different way of getting our leader to have the ear to the ground? And I have this philosophy called sounds from the ground, where every leader should have a mechanism where they can truly hear the sounds from the ground. And every good HR function or HR leader should be the bridge between the employees and the senior leaders, and somehow have that two-way, allow space for that two-way conversation to happen.
I love that. And I want to talk a bit about purpose, because I know that it's a very big part of why you moved from marketing to L&D in the first place. What is purpose to you?
It's your why. It's what gets you out of bed. It's what gives you a spring under your feet. It is really your own personal energy valve or tap of energy. And it's very unique to every individual, Nicole, and it should come without judgment. And that's the beauty of purpose. It's like a master key that unlocks your energy, your engagement, and your drive. And that's why it's so powerful, because organizations that have been smart and have allowed their employees the space to discover their purpose, they've actually benefited in multiple ways, because we now have data that proves that personal purpose can have a direct impact on business performance and business productivity. So to me, purpose is this most amazing unlock. If it was up to me, purpose would be one of the UN 2040 goals. True. It should be a human right as basic as sanitation and hygiene and water, because it doesn't happen organically.
No.
You have to have a deliberate framework and a very intentional approach to it, which we have cracked at Unilever. And the single day workshop, I tell you, is magical. In a single day, it shows you your way. And thereafter, it gives you a lens to then life decisions become very easy. Because when you know your why, which most of us don't, you can decide your next career move, you can decide your life partner, you can decide where you want to go and what you want to do. So it's the most powerful feeling that gives you resilience, that keeps you grounded, that keeps you anchored in the face of uncertainty and all the change and turbulence that we find around us.
I fully agree. And you know that. And that's why I'm doing the podcast and believing so much in you never know. And sometimes purpose comes, the realization of your purpose comes in different ways, right? For you, it was through the workshop. For some other people, it could be through the loss of someone. For myself, it was moving out of banking and hitting straight into startup and then going through ups and downs. But if I were to go back to your point about how you felt that every organization needed to have their employees know their why, how, many organizations actually feel that it's a threat if employees knew their why, because they're afraid that they might actually leave. What is your take on that in terms of organizations encouraging or facilitating their employees to actually go find their why?
Very clearly, I believe it should be employers and companies and organizations that should take ownership and allow the space and the opportunity for employers to discover their why. And the reason being that actually this is not something that you should be afraid of. This should be something you should proactively do, because what it does a great weeding exercise for you, because it brings to the fore, people get clarity on their why. And we can look at how this has served us very well, in the sense that there will be a very small minor percentage of people who might realize, hey, this is not the place for me. And if you look back, 9 out of 10 times, these will be people who have not been performing well. It's just that now they discover why, and so do the employers. So anyways, they are best served if they make a move and they go somewhere else. And typically that's what we found happens. Within 6 months of taking the workshop, around 2% of the people will just move on to something else because they thought they should have been in nursing or they should have been scaling Everest. And if you follow their trajectory, they start doing better. And the organization also wins, because then you weed out the wood, and when you replace them, chances are you'll have someone who's more energized and more aligned to your values, and therefore they'll perform better. And then the 80% of the people who do the workshop, they discover their why. You remove that dissonance between work life and actual life. They double down and they come back to work with renewed vigor, because they automatically see a connection between their purpose and how they could be living at least a part of it through their day job. And therefore, they no longer feel they're being pulled in two different directions. Rather, they do it with even more fervor. So actually, this could serve every organization very, very well to actually help the employees discover their why, because then it's a very natural plug-in You don't need to orchestrate that. How do people make the connection? People are very smart. The moment they discover their why, they will then plug in or find their own angle to connect with the organization purpose or organization goals. And you will get a fully energized and engaged workforce, while it weeds out those who are not meant to be there anyways and were dragging their feet and were not performing optimally for the past several years.
I love that perspective, because it shows a lot of emotional maturity on the part of the organization to actually encourage that introspection among their employees. And just like how organizations tell employees that you have to be open to change, actually organizations also need to be open to change when their employees change as well. Actually, it applies to life too, to be unafraid to face change. And when people change in your life, that some people then choose to take a different path, and that's okay too. And some people choose to then say, okay, you know what, this is exactly where I want to be, and that's okay as well. So that's a very interesting perspective and a good one, Anser. So now you're in L&D. What's next for you?
I feel very blessed. To be honest, I say, and it's not far from the truth, that I haven't worked a day of my life since the last 22 months, because I genuinely love what I do. So going forward, what's ahead? Firstly, I've stopped thinking of ever retiring, because now I think this is literally my oxygen. And there's so many different facets of leadership development and working with leaders and seeing the magic happen in the room unfold, right? And going forward, I guess it'll just be a natural evolution of gravitating towards impact, gravitating to where I feel I'm really in a position to give and allow individuals to gain confidence and be the best leader that they can be. And I guess I'm open to where life takes me. You never know.
Yeah, you never know, exactly. For young leaders out there who are sometimes struggling to balance between being a good employee and then being a team leader as well, and balancing both the emotional aspects of their team members and also the demands of the job, what advice would you give young leaders today?
The only thing that ever matters is human relationships. If you look back to even your previous jobs, you will barely remember the projects or the targets that you were working on. What you remember often is the people you worked with and how they made you feel at the time. And that's what you will be remembered for as a leader, and that's what we remember of the people or the leaders we worked with. So always keep relationships ahead of, because that our titles will lose value over time, our jobs lose their shine, and people move on, life goes on. You're never forever what you are today. But one thing that remains is your contact with the people that you worked with. And therefore, always put them front and center and do what's right. And you will find at the end of the day, it's not so hard to be fair between the organization goals and also doing what's right for the individuals. But always support your teams, and always in the longer term, you'll be remembered for that and not for numbers that we chase at the end of the month.
Yeah, it's not easy, right? Sometimes, because when you're in an organization, the targets and the expectations from your bosses as well do make you feel like you are pressured to do the right thing by the organization, and therefore sometimes neglect the situations of your team members as well. But I think that's a very good reminder of how we need to be as people. So thank you for that reminder.
I spoke to a CEO not so long ago, very successful CEO. I won't name the company. And I asked him, I happened to be having a long car ride with him. And I asked him, he'd retired. He took early retirement. I said, is there anything you regret? Yeah. Because clearly you've been very successful. Yeah. In an instant, Nicole, he tells me, I regret being not as kind as I could have. I was a bit too harsh, and he was super successful, delivered great results. Yeah. But that underlying sales performance today, when he looks back, is lackluster, because it truly doesn't matter. What matters is the careers he impacted, the people he impacted. And he felt that he could have been a little kinder. So that's what matters in the long term. So people should think about the long term and keep it real, keep it human.
That's a very good reminder. So I'm going to turn the question back to you. Are there any regrets that you have in your career? I
think I'm in a very good place where most regrets are the routes you didn't take, the things you didn't try.
Okay.
So in my life, being very consciously wanting to go into finance. I chased that dream till the end of the rainbow, and then discovering there's no gold for me. Changing tracks to become an accidental marketer. That's where I really listened to myself, and then being a very deliberate L&D person. So in that sense, I feel very gratified and blessed that my journey has led me on different paths, and I have dared to open the doors and walk in. One can argue that maybe I could have done it earlier, but I realize that every part of your journey contributes to where you are. So I actually don't regret at all the years that I spent in marketing, because today, even as a L&D professional, my marketing background really comes in handy, and I use that every day of my life as an L&D professional.
Everything happens in life for a reason. And there are moments in our lives that sometimes seem out of this world, or that sometimes seem so unrealistic, but it's actually there for a reason to actually help us to make the right decisions for us at that time. Were there any of these magic moments that you had in your life?
Yes, and it's about making sure that those fleeting moments don't leave you, and you are conscious of them, and then you take action. So I think many times in my life, you've been in a juncture where you need to be connected to that gut feel and that instinct. At times, we become very good at putting it away, but it's usually your body's physiological reaction, and it's a way of your body telling you or your brain telling you, hey, there's something here that either doesn't feel right or feel very right. So at times, it's just about thinking about what was it truly that made me uncomfortable, or what is it that draws you in a certain direction. And I felt that has really helped me in the last 5 years, where I've paid a bit more attention to myself, not just constantly pulling myself down and negating myself and, hey, why didn't I do really well in that conversation? I used to always put the blame on myself. But then I started giving myself a little bit of respect, not being pompous or cocky, but saying, hey, what was it about the other person that made me uncomfortable? So it wasn't truly me. I was reacting to something which I didn't realize. But that deliberate action made me conscious of many things. And that's when you say, hey, it's not just about you, it's also about how a certain energy affects you. And then maybe it's not meant to be, and that's absolutely fine. So at times you walk away, and at times you walk towards things.
Exactly. I have one final question for you. And since you were an award-winning marketer before, I wanted to ask, if you had a digital billboard that millions of people could see, what is that one message you would put on that billboard?
Beautiful question. There's one quote that I never fail to not get inspired by, and I would love to put that on the billboard, which is, dream big, start small, act now. And this is something that gives me energy every day, because it means something different. And if that billboard had two sides, I would put a second quote, which is my absolute favorite, which is, if your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough.
Wow.
So my message to the world really would be about, reach for the stars, but start today and start small, and live your dream, not someone else's dream.
I love that. That's really inspiring, and it reminds us all to be ourselves and to be the person that we came here to be, and to live our dreams and make them reality. Thank you so much, Anser. You have been so inspiring.
My pleasure. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Anser.